Well, the Berkshire Edge on air. Of course, we get joined by our good friends at the Berkshire Edge, David Marcy, and we just go through some of the stories that you'll find at the BerkshireEdge.com. Of course, not all of them, but ladies and gentlemen, here they are, the dynamic duo from Berkshire County. Good morning, guys.
Good morning. Good morning.
Where's
David?
Where's David?
He's here. David.
He's off in the ether someplace.
Here, he's here. Just a second. He just came back from.
I know that's exactly right.
From,
he was his personal Uber services.
Yes, right.
Well, anyway, the BerkshireEdge.com is the location. We will start. As a matter of fact, we'll talk about Berkshire School. There was a meeting of Berkshire School committees and local legislators. Funding formulas.
Yes. Well, this issue of school funding formulas has been, as we've talked before, has been a real issue for Great Barrington, West Stockbridge, and Stockbridge, who are all members of the same school district, and there have been fights at the annual town meetings every year because Great Barrington feels that it's paying more, even though it does have more students attending the school district, and the town funding has been tied to the number of students. So yesterday there was a meeting of the Massachusetts Association of School, or there was a meeting, a forum about this, where this was discussed. David, you want to help me on this?
Hello, are you there?
Yeah. Yes, they are.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you, David.
Oh, okay. Well, this was a meeting about school committees from the region, or from the Berkshires, because they're dealing with these sprawling school districts, and it's this perennial problem with a declining school population. At the same time, they're trying to redo the formula for school funding, school aid, Chapter 70 aid that schools depend on, and it's been hurting local schools the way the formula is concocted at the moment, and so they're trying to. It will take an act of the legislature to revise this formula so that.
Yeah, it's not something that we can do locally. It has to be done statewide.
Yeah.
Which is an issue. It's a problem.
Well, what's I guess interesting is that we're not the only ones that are complaining about this. There are other rural school districts as well.
Well, it's interesting.
Yeah, and they talk about the fact that undocumented students often remain uncounted by the state because if they came forward, they might be deported. So that the state, it's not clear, it's not clear to the state what the issues are on the local levels.
What's interesting about what you're saying is like in Region 1, we were the first regional school district formed in Connecticut many years ago, and it was formed by an act of the legislature. So if anything we want to change within Region 1, must go through the state legislature because it was formed by an act of the legislature, and I guess that's the way it is in Massachusetts as well.
Yeah. I think this is a common problem actually in probably throughout the country. Where you have regional school districts that depend upon the state legislature for determining, aid to education across multiple municipalities. So. It's just a question, I think, from the school committees if the state had better come up with a more committed attitude towards schools and education, public schools and education.
Well, you're right, and another thing and it's part of the story, even though it isn't, is the unfunded mandates that come from the states
That's right.
to the school districts.
Right.
And the school districts have no option but to have to follow these unfunded mandates.
Right.
So that all adds up to a soup where, when I look at Great Barrington, and it's a little more difficult than in Connecticut, I do believe that folks in Great Barrington have a small right to claim what they claim, but it's hard for people to look at the big picture when they control so little of the big picture.
Yeah. Right.
Well, that's true.
No, and there was a ballot proposition to amend the state constitution that would have resulted in a 4% surtax on Massachusetts residents with incomes more than $1 million. And this would have generated about $2 billion in revenue for schools, but although the state Senate passed the bill, the Supreme Judicial Court ruled that the measure was unconstitutional. So it's not going to be on the ballot, and that was really a key funding component for budget reform. So we're left now at the election day approaching with really nothing to vote on.
Amazing.
Yep.
I want to move on here to another story because I thought a new business was moving to town because over in New York State there was a store that we used to go to and it used to be Underwriter called the Bee's Knees. But the Bee's Knees, as it refers to Great Barrington, is about the Pollinator Protection Plan, PPP.
Right. That's right.
We need more honey.
That's right. We love bees.
Bees are us.
Bees are us. Great Barrington, the Agricultural Commission in Great Barrington, joined with other communities in adopting a pollinator protection plan, which is basically to reduce the use of certain kinds of pesticides that are endangering bees and butterflies and other bats and other pollinators that are really endangering the crops in Berkshire County. And so it's kind of an interesting, this is another one of those far-reaching notions that Great Barrington gets a hold of. And they're really taking to task and trying to not ban but reduce these neonicotinoids, which are neonics, which kill insects indiscriminately, and
also the Massachusetts Medical Society voiced concern over the pesticide safety because animals are reacting negatively to neonics use.
Yeah.
And they're
endocrine disruptors.
Right. So, they're not only bad for the pollinators, they're bad for farm animals and probably the rest of us.
Now, come on, I know you guys in Great Barrington just want to think you're from California.
Yeah.
You're far ahead. You want to be on the leading edge here at the East Coast.
Wait a minute. Just a minute.
Well, there's
just
Pioneer Valley. There's talk of a county-wide pollinator action plan based on Great Barrington.
All right.
Well, there's a resolution, listen to this, that is currently a resolution limiting the use of these neonic insecticides. Is being considered by the Massachusetts State House, as well as Connecticut.
There you go.
How about that?
There you go.
Put that in your pipe and smoke it.
See, we're just following suit here in Connecticut. I wish we'd do the same thing with the trains, to be honest with you. But
well, no, wait a minute. Connecticut and Maryland both passed such resolutions.
Wow.
You guys are already way ahead of us.
That was a mistake in Connecticut. We made a mistake, obviously. We never get out in front of anything, to be honest with you. All right. Well, speaking about bees and growing things, you've got the longtime director of Berkshire Grown with a story.
Zoitland.
Yeah,
Barbara Zoitland. Yeah, she is stepped down as Berkshire Grown. Berkshire Grown is this wonderful organization that promotes sustainable agriculture and local farms. and during the winter they hold these wonderful farmers markets in school gyms.
And in the summer.
And in the summer, of course, they hold a lot of farmers markets and encourage farmers markets throughout the county. Anyways, Barbara's stepping down, and her another member of the Berkshire Grown family, Margaret Moulton, is taking over. So I think this is a good move, and glad to see that the Berkshire Grown is thriving.
This is really a wonderful organization.
Yeah, it is.
Because, what it does is it tries, first of all, it promotes the whole farm-to-table idea of using local food, and it celebrates restaurants that do source their ingredients locally. It also supports farmers, both financially and also by promoting the importance of local farmers, and it has two wonderful dinners a year that are really musts for the community. They're Berkshire Grown, they're fundraisers, but everybody turns out. I mean, I'm sure they're turning people away now because it's so crowded, but they have at the dinner that we just went to last week. There were about 15 different restaurants, each of which had a station in the hall, and they were offering small tastes of delicious food that had all been made with local ingredients. And
this was held at Butternut.
It's Ski Butternut at one of the lodges, and then in the summer or in the spring they have another dinner, which is really a wonderful sit-down dinner, which is cooked by chefs by about 10 different restaurants. They all collaborate on different courses. But it makes the value of farms, the importance of farmers, the importance of restaurants. I mean, it's really a community booster, but with very practical consequences in supporting farmers. So. And Barbara Zeitlin has been the executive director for about 10 years, I think, maybe more.
Yeah.
And she's been a wonderful spokesperson, a wonderful organizer, and so she's built this organization. And we, I'm sure. I mean, we've met Margaret Moulton, and she seems wonderful, and I think the organization is going to continue to thrive.
All right. I just got my first press kit from the Chatham, New York, for Columbia County Film Festival about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. And there I see on your list of stories that you're covering is the 54th Annual New York Film Festival was covered. But we've got, I'll tell you what, between Biff and Chatham and the Woodstock Film Festival.
We've got a lot of movies.
Yeah, we have a lot of movies that are shown in this area.
Well, this was an interesting. We have a film reviewer, Barbara Quart. Her husband, Leonard Quart, is a columnist for us and actually is a professor emeritus of film at NYU, and is quite good on film. But they attend the New York Film Festival, and we just published the first of two stories she's writing for us on the offerings of these new films, and thing is, they will be showing up at the Triplex Cinema and in Great Barrington and in other area theaters pretty soon. Yeah. So this is a little peek at what's coming, and so she's a quite lively writer, and the films that she's reviewing are really interesting. So it's a little preview into the coming season of new films, which is really interesting, I think.
Yeah, and the New York Film Festival is wonderful. It's the one time of the year that I am sorry I'm not still living in New York and living 3 blocks from Lincoln Center because it's so exciting to go to see these films when nobody else knows about them and you haven't read reviews, and it's just a wonderful surprise.
It's the raw, it's the raw experience where you're not prejudged by anything.
You don't you don't preview it to see whether it's worth going to.
Yeah.
You just go and you find out.
Yep.
Yeah, it's like going to a museum, actually. Just to say, oh, well, look at that. How about that? It's seeing things that you might not ordinarily think of going to. So they're really, and we're lucky. You're right. We're lucky to have both the Berkshire International Film Festival in Great Barrington and the Chatham Film Festival, which is really good over in Chatham, New York.
Right.
And the Woodstock as well.
Right.
They're all very close, and they've all come a long way, and they're now respected film festivals. That's the great thing about it.
Yes, they are.
Well, we'll move on here because this has to crop up locally, and that is the Brett Kavanaugh Supreme Court nomination. You've got a number of letters that have come in columns that have come into your paper.
Well, I find the one by Carolyn Neuberger especially interesting because she's got a different take. And it's her thing is not did he do it or did he not do it? But she's a psychologist. I mean, she also is an artist and writes music. She and her husband Eli Neuberger write music reviews for us, which she illustrates. But she's a very bright and interesting woman, and her take is that Kavanaugh is declaring that he is not going to quit. And she said, this is the masculine, manly approach that no matter how wrong I was, no matter how dangerous this is to the country, I'm not a quitter and I'm not going to quit.
So it's all about him.
So it's all about him, and it's all about a false sense of masculinity and a false entitlement and sense of self-preservation, that we would rather have somebody who doesn't quit, even if it's somebody who has committed an unacceptable action and doesn't belong on the Supreme Court. So I found that a very interesting. I mean, it's a different take on.
Yeah, she said he should withdraw. That's her argument.
Of course, he's not going to. But
no, but that's what she said, that he should.
And, of course, we have Trump this morning mocking Christine Blasey Ford.
Well, that's the whole thing about the Supreme Court nominee that I think will be the deciding factor is not much is going to come back from the FBI thing. We just know this. There's just not enough time. But the comments of the president and also the lack of remorse for his youthful actions by the nominee will be the things that will weigh on the 3 Republican votes and the 2 red state Democrats that they'll have to make their decision on. Because I don't know.
He could have said, you're right. He could have said, well, I was just wild and crazy when I was younger.
Hey,
I've learned better, and it's made me a wiser person to get through that.
I did.
And people would have said, "You're right. That's the truth." And so
the whole thing is
that just to deny it that is in itself the disqualifying attitude.
And it's not just him. This diminishes the institution of the Supreme Court. It's bad enough that we had Clarence Thomas, who in his 25 years on the bench has not asked a single question. I don't know what his role is on that court, but now to have 2 people there who are clearly unsympathetic to women and extremely partisan on an institution that's not supposed to be partisan. It's one thing to have conservative views, but it's another thing to be clearly partisan. The way he lashed out at the Democrats, and he's a former Republican operative, maybe a judge now, but he's a Republican, and and an active Republican, and it's going to be very hard for any of us to find credibility in the decisions of the Supreme Court if he is sitting on the bench.
All right, we finally have one story left here, and that is the debate on staffing levels at the hospitals in Massachusetts of nurses.
Yeah, this
is on the ballot.
This is on the ballot.
Statewide,
and it's to determine what the Massachusetts Nurses Association feels is a adequate level of nurses and staffing on the floor at area hospitals, because they're claiming that in hospitals, and in order to save money and make money, they're reducing the number of nurses and therefore compromising the care that patients are receiving. And it's odd that such a measure actually would become for voters, but that's the it is. It's a referendum, so that's coming. It's been very contentious, and if you drive around Berkshire County, you see signs no on Proposition 1, no, or yes on vote for the nurses. There's quite a debate among the lawn signs, as well as in the letters to the editor.
Well, and there's also a debate among nurses.
Yeah.
That there is a nurses' union that's supporting this bill, but there's a nurses' association that is not. And the argument on one side is that nurses are, that hospitals are understaffed and patients are not getting enough nursing attention. And on the other side, it's that care to the patients would be interrupted because you wouldn't be able to care for a patient until you called in the right complement of nurses, and patients may actually be endangered, and doctors will not have the same decision-making ability that they would have without this. That the staffing issues will override medical decisions. So it's hard to know. I mean, it really is hard to know. I'm sure they're both right from a certain perspective. But of course, if this is passed, the cost to hospitals across the state will be very, very high. That they will need to put on increased staffing levels, and it will be very expensive. And they're all saying they can't afford it.
All right. Well, those are just some of the stories you'll find at the Berkshire Edge. Just some. TheBerkshireEdge.com. Guys, we will speak to you next week.
Yeah. Okay. Have a good week, you guys.
Take care.
Bye.
Yep. Bye.
Bye.
That is This Week in the Berkshire Edge. You can find them, once again, TheBerkshireEdge.com.